Miguel. I want to thank you for joining today. I'm excited to actually get a chance to dig into some new features that are coming out in December 2023 for Power BI Desktop as part of that continued initiative you've had with the core visuals team. We've already had a lot of stuff come out in the last year related to some of the slicers, the new KPI cards, and I'm continuously excited to be participating in a lot of the discussions around what will be coming and also to see them in action. So this is going to be an exciting video to be able to walk through today with you for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm really excited to show you what is coming in December. And I think accessibility, like people that like accessibility or they want to design some accessible reports, are going to be super happy on the features that we are launching this time.
Oh, and I hadn't even thought of it in terms of like accessibility too, but I know we're getting a lot more configurations for formatting for a lot of the charts and even some additional labeling, which I'm sure people pretty much universally love to be able to have both from the card, but also from the charting perspective. You know, just custom data labels for everything, and having that become easier and easier for sure. As we get started, though, just a little brief recap of kind of who you are and your role with Microsoft before we get started for people less familiar with some of the stuff that you've been doing over the last 12 months.
Yeah, well, I've been working for Power BI product team, and my job is to be the core visuals product manager. And I started like in January this year. This is gonna be my first year as PM. And again, my role is just to transform all data visualizations and all in any other visual element like text boxes, images, shapes, and anything that you can drag and drop into the page canvas. That's the core visuals territory.
Yep.
And that's what I'm
And
doing.
I'm happy to finally see some good initiatives on that because it's the last thing that I'd say has definitely been lacking for Power BI because we have the best semantic model in the industry for sure. That's
Yeah.
hard to compete against that, but it's a lot harder to argue for the reporting layer that we've had historically. It works well enough, but you know, a lot of missing features compared to other stuff. So
Oh
these
yeah.
have been nice and welcome updates that are really giving us a lot more dials to configure for sure.
Well, yeah, the trend has started, and we're not going to stop it. We
Mhm.
will every month we will give you something else, and the idea is to improve it and really help users to make better reports.
Exactly. You ready to hop into it?
Oh, yep,
Beautiful. Let's transition over and let's take a look at some of the new stuff that we'll be getting here in December.
perfect. All right. As you can see, this is our demo that we always use to showcase these features. And today I'm going to show you the visual shapes. We call them visual shapes, everything that is like columns, bars, ribbons, even the error bars are part of the shape improvements that we want to do. Error bars are coming after, like in February, but right now is we want to start with columns, ribbons, and bars. As you can see here, when I select my column chart, I can go into columns. And now you're gonna see that we have apply settings to by categories. If I only have one single category or series, you can see all the categories down here. If I have
Hmm.
series, then you're gonna see apply settings to by series, and then you can select multiple series and configure or change the formatting settings for each individual series. Below apply settings to we have color. We can continue applying conditional formatting, that's fine. But now you're going to be able to change the transparency of these bars or columns. I can make them less
Uh,
transparent or more transparent. I can
so you
go
can
and
either
select,
change the color or you could mix the color yourself with the
yeah,
background, essentially. Okay.
that's correct. I can select anything here and then have another, like in this case, I select January and I have another transparency. That's why when I went to all and I change it, it didn't change January because I already configured this one with a particular transparency.
Now,
Same
now
thing
I'm
as I
I'm
did
someone
for
who likes
2022.
to point out and ask questions about some of the UI. So I do know that we have a hierarchy built into the visual right now, which is year and month. The category currently just shows the month. I'm curious, will there be a an update at some point to potentially show the concatenated total? Because if you do the drop down, it's sequential, I'm assuming, but you don't actually know the year that it's related to.
That's correct. You're right. The plan is for us to fix this drop
Okay,
down. However, if
excellent.
somebody wants to achieve something like this, they can use obviously conditional formatting
Yep.
and
Okay.
change the color. But as well, what I did is I went to the x-axis. then I turn on the concatenate labels.
Ah, and
Then
then
I
okay.
went back to the category
Oh,
drop
okay.
down, and now I was able to select each
Cool.
individual series that I want to change the
So at least
transparency
for
and why.
now, to get full context of every of the proper name for every column, you can just basically use the concatenate labels, which will then feed the query that that drop down list is giving. Okay,
Absolutely. Yep.
good,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
that's a
That's a
good
good
way.
trick to know. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. However, we know that this is an opportunity for us to fix, and we will fix it.
cool.
All right, so that's the color transparency, and now we have border as well, and this is a good option which I really like, the match column color. By default, it's going to be always off. So you're going to have one single color for all columns. However, again,
Okay.
you can select a particular month and then
Mhm.
change the color for that particular column or range of columns. You can do that. But if you just want to replicate the same color as the main color value or shape, then you just turn on this one and it will take the same color. And now you can change the transparency.
So so the border is matching the column color, but it is it, it's dropping the shade by like a few percentage points just because it wants to still have it represented that there is an actual border, I think, if that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's what I did. I didn't want to bring more noise into the data visualization, so I
Mhm.
believe if we make this one quite dark, it will make. Sorry, I didn't want to do that. Let me go back. If
But
we
the
make
border will always be a little bit different from whatever the color, just to
a little bit.
otherwise you'd turn the border off. You don't need it.
Yeah, that's correct. In the way that I manage it is 20% transparency for the shape, and
Mhm.
then 0% transparency for the border. I think that
Oh,
is a nice option. If you don't have any transparency for the color in the shape, and I bring it to 0, you won't
oh,
see
then they
any
match.
border because
Okay,
both of them match. Yeah. So that's why I always have like a 20%.
gotcha.
And I think that gives like a good understanding that there is some kind of border, but without adding so much noise.
So they
If
keep the base hex code when you have match on, but the configuration between the two that is unique would be the ability for to adjust their transparencies accordingly to make them still separate but aligned on whatever single color you selected. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
very cool.
I find having something like this can be distracting. However, maybe sometimes in certain circumstances, you need to have like a section that is super highlighted so people can look at
Hmm.
it, and maybe this is beneficial. But if you don't have that in your data visualization, I won't recommend it.
Yeah, I agree. And like I like this this breakdown. Is it and I in general, like I'm a huge proponent of soft borders. Like you already use this, but my I don't like borders on visuals. I usually use that upper left light gray color, and then I have a one snap separation of every single visual. So the border itself is a light background, but it's borders should not be something that you should actively pay attention to, but
Yeah.
in your subconscious, it helps you just without thinking understand that these things are split or separated.
That's correct, and that's something that it's all about accessibility. Sometimes people need to have some kind of like a light contrast between
Hmm.
series, and having those outlines or borders around the shape is a good is a good feature that they can
Yep.
use.
Because then the high ratioed borders are the things that you pay attention to, right? Like
Yeah,
you're the between the two, the outlined ones over on the right stand out as much more of a like a contrasted element. So you notice those almost immediately versus the blue, which is kind of it's less unique.
that's correct. In this case, what I'm doing is maybe this is your forecast, like everything in
Yep. Hmm.
2023. So what you can do is you can like use more transparency, increase the highlight of the board, like I'm sorry, increase the
Yep.
border contrast, and in that way you can see everything that has happening, and then these bars will give you some kind of sense of this is maybe something from the past, maybe this is your goal based on other periods, or maybe this is the forecast. And I'm using the same colors, just different transparencies, and this keeps the design clean as well.
That's really cool. I mean, I even have ideas like because there are some people who occasionally clients, businesses that get future sales, sales that are going to be in January and February. And I could even imagine, a stacked bar in there where, if you actually have a couple of sales already in January, the bar starts to fill up and, feed into the to the forecast bar that's sitting there, so you can actually see
Yeah.
the growth into the values as you go. Yeah, even within
Well,
a month
well,
instead of
there is
across
something
months.
coming in February regarding that idea. I won't say
Oh,
much, but it will, like we
nice.
are we are going there out of the box. You're gonna be able to do things like that easily.
That's cool. Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to that.
Well, that's border. I just want to show you the potential, and there is something else. I'm just gonna jump to the next visual,
Mhm.
which is a cluster column chart. And the reason I'm here is because with these visualizations, when we use legend, I'm just gonna go. I need to see the fields. Sometimes an object doesn't show the fields really easily, so I'm gonna click again.
Still one reason that I don't actually have on object formatting turned off in mine. I'm the grumpy old man who doesn't wanna use the new interface.
Got it. All right, so I have the panel here. That's why I didn't see
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, because you pinned it. Yep, yep.
yeah. My fault. This is new. And big kudos for the Canvas team because this was required to have both panels side by side, and they did. All right. And sometimes you're gonna end up with two values in the y-axis, which is gonna give you a legend, or one single value, but maybe you want to split that one into categories, and that's when we drag and drop any series in here in the legend feel well.
Mm,
And when we use
okay.
these two scenarios, then we're gonna end up with more options in the format pane. I'm gonna show you that because layout now it's available. And let me close this up and then open this one. Oh, sorry, I was here. The layout
The
is
the
now
the
available
layout and just so we have, what's the top okay, so under columns,
under
and we have a
columns
new section in columns for here we go, okay, for layout, just so
for
we can
layout.
follow. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So in the layout, we have three options in this case. We have reverse order, which what we do is basically just changes the order of the clusters. This was not available before. We were able
Oh,
to do
okay, so
this.
it's not reversing the order of the axis because you could do that from the sort option, but it's
Yeah.
reversing the order of the items in here. Now, so a follow-up question on that is the order not already maintained by the order of the items in the well?
No, it's based on how we. Yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. So is the order depending this the
Yeah, because if
order
you
of the
flip those
wells
here,
or the fields?
that I think that would do a similar thing to reverse order, right?
Yeah, you just change it and then it,
Okay.
it, it replaces. However, that doesn't work with legend. If you use a legend, then we
Oh,
have
okay.
like an order. Or if
Gotcha.
you go to the data model and then sort by something else, then
Okay.
you end up with that order that you can
Mm,
reverse as well, but only reverse the axis, not the
okay.
series. And you can reverse the order only for stat column charts, but not for cluster column charts. Now you
Gotcha. Okay.
can reverse it for both. So this is a good new feature. And the other one is sort by value. This one is tricky. The only thing that I can tell you is you already know this one because the ribbon chart does it. Ribbon chart is a visualization that helps us for distribution, comparison, and ranking.
Yes.
So
Yep.
ranking, it changes the order from the largest to the smallest in every single category or series.
Oh,
And
so this does this series by
this
well,
does the same
category by
thing.
category. Okay,
Yeah.
so it applies a
Yeah.
ribbon chart type logic to other visuals.
Yep. It does it. So
Okay.
here we can see that right now this is the largest, and the smallest is the blue one. But in
So
April
now, okay.
we have the largest, which is the blue, and the smallest is the gray one.
And
That's
if you do a reverse order, will that do both then?
of course it
Good.
will do.
Okay.
It will follow the
So
same principle.
so essentially whatever order logic is being applied per axis x-axis category in this visual's case, the reverse will just flip that logic. So if it's done in terms of the well order, it will flip it. But if it's sorted in terms of the value order, it will still flip it. So that
Yeah,
just will reverse whatever final order is being applied to the visual.
that's correct.
Cool. Okay. Glad. Yeah. It would make sense that they work together, but that's good that they can be used in tandem. I do like the sort value. And as we know, like the at least the stack chart, ribbon chart works very well for that. So I can see a lot of good use cases. I'm be curious to know the so how many native visuals will that sort by value be available for? I'm guessing
All
bar and column at least.
all
Line.
columns and bars. Yeah, all
Okay.
shapes. All shapes. The work that we are doing here is we want to revamp shapes, lines, and markers. And at
Mm,
some point, when we finish all shapes, which is columns, bars, ribbons, and error bars, then we will jump
yep.
into lines, and that's area charts, line charts,
Hmm.
stacked area line charts, all reference lines. Everything that uses lines will be revamped. But that's after we finish with error bars.
Okay. No,
All right.
excellent.
Another way to see that is here. So we have a bar chart, and you can see that it's just respecting the order. But if I use this sort by value, well, no, I don't think it's gonna make a huge change because all of them are the same. No, I don't think that this is a good example.
Oh yeah.
But I can reverse the order here. All right, let me go and show you the
Can you
next
do
one.
the reverse order one more time?
Yeah, of
Curiously.
course.
Okay, yeah. So for some reason, I thought the data label was moving, but no, the data label is still inside bottom. It's just moving over towards the axis. Okay. For some
Yeah,
reason, I
and
thought the
now
data label orientation was changing, but
and now
staying the same.
and now that I'm using sort by value, this is the second largest. So then is
Hmm.
taking the second place.
Yep.
If I
Okay.
if I do not use it, it's just using the same
Yeah.
the
Okay.
same order as my legend, but in reverse mode.
Okay. And I'm guessing all of these two will, you know, inherit anything that's being applied as the top end or all that other stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah,
essentially just running it on the final query that visual query that's being generated for the visual. Okay.
that's correct. Now
Very, very cool.
let me go to the next one. This is my favorite part of this feature, in my opinion,
I
which
mean,
is
ribbon chart for years has been one of my favorite visuals. It's um because it is the most story driven visual in my opinion that Power BI natively has.
yeah, yeah, it is. And now it's gonna be your favorite because as you can notice, this ribbon chart has an axis, and that was impossible before.
Yep.
And many people ask why is that we never have access in the ribbon chart. Maybe they forgot, but no, the reason is data visualization best practices. It was just impossible, or mathematically impossible to handle explosion, or when we were exploding the series and keeping the legend. It's just impossible.
I mean, I'll be honest and say I was today years old when I figured out why there wasn't actually an axis. I always knew there wasn't and I missed it. Like, oh man, it would be really nice if I could actually see a line that shows me how big this column is. But until you explained it to me before we started recording this, like I didn't actually understand the math behind why. It makes total sense. And I'm really happy that now we have a fix to allow this to exist now. So yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So here we have the column. Well, this is another change that we are doing. We want to make all formatting settings more organized. Before we used to call them ribbons, like these columns, we used to call them ribbons. So not anymore. The columns are being called columns, and the ribbons or these connectors are called ribbons, and they have their own group.
Yep.
So,
And we've been able to at least separate the bands from each other horizontally, but I can see that we can do it now vertically. I think before we talk about maybe some of the column configurations that like can we do a little bit of a deep dive on that explosion versus erosion if you want if you are willing to start there because I think that's a really important concept to explain to people on especially why it didn't have it previously
yeah, of
an
course.
access.
Of course, let's go and I'll show you how this works, and then I'll explain
Hmm.
the reasons behind. So here in the layout, same place as before. In the
Yep.
layout, when we have this kind of stacked series or dynamic series, when we use legend or multiple measures,
Yep.
um, we have these other two options down here: the space between categories, which you already know, and space between series, which is new. Space between series has two different options or modes. First mode is called explosion, which is by turning on this toggle. And the other option is erosion. You don't see the name because that's the one that we will give you by default. If
Hmm.
you if you do not turn on the explosion, so basically you're eroding the chart, and this is what it
Well,
looks, or
each
this
of
is how it
those little rectangles and squares are slowly getting smaller as white the white is eating into it.
yeah.
The grand total height for every one of these does not change. Like, yeah. So it's like, why don't you kick that all the way over to like 6? Just make it as big, as tall as possible, or whatever the most pixels you can do.
I'll show
Um,
you. I'll show you the reason. The
yeah.
plan is to give more control, but we want to try it out. We want the community to,
Hmm.
to let us know how they feel with this feature, and start like improving it. But I'll
Yep.
show you the reason why we kept it in 5 pixels for now. Is not final, but we just want you to try it out, and I'll give an explanation why. So that's what it does. You can see that I'm changing I'm eating the series,
Hmm.
but nothing changes. So the column stays the same height, no
Its
problem.
relation to the axis is
Yeah,
consistent.
it's the
Yes, it's
same.
not
Yeah,
moving in relation to that. Yep.
and
Yep. Okay.
and the only thing that we are eating or eroding is just the bottom of each series.
Yep.
In theory, the first series will never be eroded because there is nothing that we can eat from the bottom. But the
You can
other
almost
ones,
think of
will.
it as a white overlay. Like,
Yeah,
the chart in the back end is remaining consistent, but there's this extra formatting being laid on top of it without changing the underlying visual whatsoever to a
that's
degree. Like,
correct.
that's how I see it in my head.
That's a good way to explain it. Now, the other option, which is explosion, is this. We explode, and maybe you say, well, this is the same stuff, but it's not. This
We
one,
saw the heights increase too.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything increases. If I have, for example, 5 different series here, this column will be way taller because each of these,
Yep.
like 8%, or I don't know how many pixels, but it will be like 10 pixels here. I will add 10 pixels plus 10 pixels,
Yep.
10 plus 10, like it will end up with like 30 pixels on top of the height of the bar. So then this bar might look higher than another one that only has one gap or two gaps,
And just I'd
which
say just toggle it on and off a couple times because you can see the height of all three of them together actually shift up and down. So like that
yeah,
actually helps show it a little bit. If you just turn the explosion off, the toggle no, so keep that up, keep that on the right, and now just turn the explosion off or on. You can actually see them pop up and down a little bit. They
yeah,
actually get a bit taller and shorter. So it's the difference between, again, like laying a white line on top of everything versus literally wedging it in between them. So this has no height increase. The other one increases the height, which therefore, um, and I think my first question on this is like, well, can't you still have an axis? If it's equal heights for everything, then you could just scale the axis up. But as you mentioned, not every period of every category on this ribbon is always going to have 3. So if you didn't have individual sales in February, you're only inserting 16 pixels instead of 32. So you can't normalize that back to an axis if you're wedging random bits of spacing in between it, and the spacing between each category is inconsistent. It's impossible to create a scaled axis off of that.
yeah. The only way that it can work in the future is when you select July or June. Then
Hmm.
at that moment, we show you the axis for that particular
Ah,
selection.
okay.
That's the only way, because basically when you explode, each column has its own axis.
Yep.
They cannot share axis anymore once it's exploded. Now, a good way to visualize this change is this graphic.
Mm,
So
yep.
here we have the regular with no erosion or explosion. And you can see, first of all, the column ends in 40K. And the last series is 27 pixels high. When we erode it, we respect the height of the column. So we're still ending at 40K. We respect the point where every series end up. Like we can see here, like maybe 3K is where this dark blue ends, and this one ends as well in 3K. No change. This one is the same as the one in regular. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that now this one, instead being 27 pixels, which is the right size, now is 24. So if we talk about data visualization best practices, this might misleading you because you're seeing a smaller gap than actually what it is.
Yeah, it depends on where you're comparing, and is the grand total of all the values combined more important, or are the individual values ranked? So depending on
Yep.
the visualization you're using, like there's arguments on a ribbon where if the focus is really on intercategory comparison for subtotals rather than whatever the grand total is for that particular month. So exploded might actually be a better option to use because you get a
That's correct.
better representation of that. But other visuals, maybe less so. Like you might actually want an erosion on a standard stack column or something else. But you can choose that now as a developer. So I like the flexibility with that. And depending on the goal of the narrative for that visual, you can choose on what is more accurate as a representation of the data.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah, it all depends the kind of analysis you need to apply to your data
Hmm.
visualization. We don't want to give you restrictions. We want to give you options,
Yep.
and that's why we are adding these two options: erosion and explosion. Now, in explosion, you can see I'm respecting the size of each series. So if I compare this dark blue with the one is regular, it's exactly the same amount of pixels. Just like 20 pixels is the green and
Yep.
I'm sorry, 27 pixels is the regular, and as well the exploded. But what is the problem here? That now the total of the column is not
Yep.
matching the reality. This one is higher,
Exactly.
and this one should supposed to end in 40K, not more than that. That's why the axes have to be turned off because now we are misleading people if we show you the axis. Yeah, it all depends. Depending your analysis is the one that you have to choose. One things that are good for erosions are not for explosion, and vice versa.
Yep.
All
No,
right,
it's
but
it's
I
really
hope
cool that we get
this
that.
yeah I hope this works. Now I'm going to show you one of the things that you need to be aware of why the separation and the things that you need to be aware of. Here I have my bar chart, and I'm going to use erosion. In this case, I have erosion already, but now I'm going to scroll down, and now you're going to end up like you're going to see a really small series, and that erosion is having hard time to like go after really tiny series.
I mean,
Like
it's not even putting in the 3 pixel spaces
no, it
because
can't.
I mean, it can't. There's just
It
not
can't.
enough room.
Yeah, otherwise you're gonna end up with a like a gap, like a space with nothing. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's one of the things that you need to be aware. If you end up with things like this, maybe you should use explosion, because in explosion we will always show you all series. But now you can see that there is like a huge gap and the size is so small. But at least you can see a like everything is
Okay. So essentially, like, I mean, it's okay, so if you scroll up a little bit, because I just had to interpret the data. Yeah, right, down a bit more, where there's only one category, right there. So the and this is something you have to retrain your brain a little bit when starting to use this because like it looks like New South Wales is bigger because it sticks out further, but collectively Delaware, the the sales of one is collectively greater than New South Wales for lost open in one. So the
yeah.
actual overall value is bigger, but you have like a pixel amount of sales for these other two categories, and with the spacing, it might look bigger because it's
Older.
wider, but it still is lower in the sorting. But it is at least more accurate on providing those even spaces. This one is they kind of bounce up back and forth a little bit with some of those.
And here is.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the kind of things that you need to be aware. Yeah, we're gonna make data visualization more accessible, but just be careful how you use it because it can
Yep.
play against.
Put a
Um,
top end, put a
yeah,
top end filter on the visual.
that's correct. That's a good way to do it. And in the future, we want to add a bucket, like a other bucket, and it's gonna work
Yeah.
perfectly with these features.
That has been requested by so many people for
Yeah,
so many years, and I'm sure individuals like myself and others have done a lot of those hacked things where we build a custom table that has a disconnected custom table with an extra row for other, and then you have to write a measure that does a bottom end, sums the data together. Like it's possible, and I've built it, but it is extra tables in the model and extra like two extra measures to basically calculate it and stick it into this custom series of rows from a table to actually show an others column. So having a toggle for that someday in the future would be lovely. Just
yeah.
like with
That's
field parameters, simplified modeling a lot. That would definitely help for a lot of customers who really want a quick and easy others column to show up.
yeah. The other thing we want to implement it for I mean the legend. So then
Hmm.
you can bucket like a if I have like another 10 series, but they are so small, I can just use them in one single bucket.
Yep.
We want to use it for the axis. Sometimes you have many categories, but another ones are so small. Like in this case, with the bar chart, we went going all the way down. And why do you need to see all these ones if they are so small? So maybe you want to see only the Texas, California, Florida, Virginia, and then other states. So that's going to be
Yep.
other category, not serious. It is going to be
Yeah,
an
yeah,
like
exactly. I mean, it's the equivalent of using groups, which has an other, but it's a top end version of that, so it's dynamic. Because
yeah,
you can relabel and then use that other include others group, which is great, but it's fixed. It does not base it on calculation. So top end with other on the categorical rows in the visual would be really really nice.
yeah. So we are preparing that scenario, and that's why we are bringing this explosion and erosion, because right now even that it might be disruptive with cases like the ones that I just showed.
Hmm.
It's gonna be good once we implement the other bucket for Axis and for Legend. All right, let's go back to this one. I haven't finished. Remember that we can change the sort by value. Usually for ribbon chart, we're gonna keep this one on because it makes sense based on the analysis. But if you want to make the ribbon chart behave like any other column chart, you can just turn off this one and it will look like this.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
It will remove the ranking analysis and then it will just sort them the same way as your axis. And again, if you don't
Okay.
like this sortness, then you can just change the order.
I mean, it's essentially just allowing you to do a stack column chart with ribbons, but with or without the ranking. And
That's
the reverse
correct.
order is also really nice because I definitely know I've had times where like the top bars that you want are the ones with negative numbers, and I've had to use a special measure which reverses the number, and then I used a calculation group which did custom data labels that then showed the correct number.
Yeah.
So I had to hack that apart quite. I got it to work, but it was a lot of extra steps to get it to be designed correctly.
Yeah, yep. Now let me transform this ribbon into a regular like stacked column chart. I can make this one behave like a ribbon now by using the sort by value.
Okay.
And now the columns and bar charts can do the same thing. They can have a ranking analysis, and you can see only like the highest is at the bottom and the lowest at the top, or vice versa, if we
Hmm.
want to change the order.
I like that. There's a lot of extra formatting options coming for this. Uh, there is a lot of industry trend on rounding. Is there ever going to be a an option on cornering the adding a rounding to the border at all on the individual stuff? So like maybe with a ribbon it wouldn't make as much sense, but if you wanted to just a teeny bit of a little corner round on some of these, I'm
Yeah.
guessing somebody out there would want to. So
Oh yeah. Imagine that individual is a really important, or unknown is a really important metric, and these ones
mhm,
are not that important. So what users can do is they can continue using the separation in color, but they
okay.
can go into let me select the commodity and then color.
Alright.
I'm gonna make this
Mhm.
one, I don't know, 70%.
And then what can you do on the border again? Remind me. So if you turn the border on, what options are
I
there?
can, yeah, I can turn it off, or I can keep it matching, but maybe I want to increase it even more, so then it's still there but not too noticeable. I
My
can do
only
the
other
same.
thought is the line stylings that you have solid, dashed, dotted. I could imagine a one because it's kind of like formatting a line, but you're formatting the border instead. I could see that as something really useful in here is the same three options for line style that you have on line charts could be useful potentially on the outlines of these too. I want the border, but I want a dashed border for individual. I want a dotted border for committee.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's coming. Yeah,
Yes,
it's planned to come. Uh,
excellent.
and then we have this one which is unknown, which is maybe super important for us to track, and I can make this one like highlighted like this. Now
Okay.
in the ribbon, this is the part that I like, because this one I can change the transparency
Hmm.
Maybe I want something like this, really high, or maybe I wanted to have another color because it's not that important for me, and I can do this one here, and now it's going to be like gray. It depends what I want, or just nothing at all.
Okay.
And now for the unknown, which is important for me, I can go to border and keep that black border like this. And now I can separate. If I go to all, I can keep it together, or I can separate it. Here's if I want to keep it together. Maybe if it's like that, I don't want any border, something like this, or maybe I want, or I can separate them. If I select all, go to layout, and then I can separate my ribbons.
That's yeah. So like you have a ton of customization to mm, de-emphasize and emphasize the data that you care about as much as possible, and then to separate the elements. I mean, the stuff that you're essentially adding to this is what I've used for, or is what a lot of the industry calls like negative space. So it's the space between that doesn't even necessarily have to have a color or anything else, but it helps you to identify different data points on a visualization or between visualizations.
Yeah. So now you can see here, I'm still comparing this kind of three series, but my emphasis is not on the first two. It's
Yep.
just on the unknown, and it's so noticeable because I'm using more transparency. I'm using outline. Like all those elements now are going to speak louder about the kind of message that you want to tell your audience.
I
And
like
that's
that
the
a lot.
beautiful thing about visual shapes with all these transformations. We're really giving you a ton of tools to enhance that message.
Hmm. No, that's very slick. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to update some of these reports. It's one of those where get to talk to some clients, be like, "Hey, I have new toys I get to implement in your reporting if you want to make these pop even more." I enjoy the artistic like canvas and stuff. It's like, and only some of them actually want to like. I don't know if I want to spend money to go back and redo something that's not broken, but I love getting new sandbox things to play with to apply my artistic um, mm, art and science to a lot of this stuff. So
Yeah, for
the
sure.
extra options are really useful. I like the degrees of freedom, that we have for the visualizations.
Yeah, so that's what is coming. We will continue adding more enhancements for the columns, like what you just asked, right? You wanted to have the dash line and all the stuff that's coming as well. We will
Yep.
add it. We don't want to bring so much because it can
Mhm.
overwhelm our users. And you can
That's
see with
awesome.
the new reference labels, we added like another 40 options. The button slicer contains so many settings, and now with these visual shapes and ribbons, is going to be way more too. So we want to keep going, but we don't want to overwhelm. We want to keep gathering some feedback and then continue enhancing from there. At least every month, we want to give you some kind of enhancements.
Absolutely. And I think you've hit it on the head where to switch back to our conversation. But here's you don't want to release too much at once. Have anything get buried or missed. It's only so much people can digest on a monthly basis on new features to
Yeah,
use, and only so much the development team can do. But I'm excited to see some of these changes. I think this is definitely going a long way to start to allow the report layer to overlap a lot of what can be done with other reporting platforms. So hopefully these will continue to require myself and other people who use Power BI to have left of those conversations of like, I'm sorry, like unless you build a bespoke visualization, and spend 20 hours, you can't do this. Or you have to use DAX. You have to write a bunch of DAX to do this. You have to use a calculation group. You have to use layered
yeah,
visuals. So the less hacking that you need to do to get these kind of features, the better. So
the better.
um, yeah, your native visuals are becoming more and more bespoke, which is great. I'm very happy to see this stuff.
Yeah. So now the last part is data labels. And this is a huge, it seems small, but no, actually it's a huge enhancement that is going to affect the future of Axis, the future of
Hmm.
Legends, the future of whatever the use values. It will like this is the foundation of that work. So any feedback that you can give us based on that experience, we will appreciate it because that's going to shape the future of values in Power BI. And here you can see my visual that you saw at the beginning. And something really noticeable is that the label. The label contains now three different aspects, just the same as the reference labels for the new car visual. And
Mhm.
that is, if I go to the visual, let me select it first. Now I'm going to go into data labels, and we will see the typical apply settings too. And we're going to see these options. And this is the ones that I was talking about, the title, value, and detail. Title is whatever information you want to use. In this case, I can use some of the ones that we already give you by default, like series name. And if I select this one, it will show me July, June, because that's my series or my category. If I have multiple series, like in this case, at the left side, I have a pie chart with lost, open, and one. If I have lost, open, and one, then it will show those names up here.
Okay.
But you can customize it and you can use whatever you want. You can just drag a measure here and automatically will be dynamic.
Yep.
I'm using a trick here because I have a value, which is the number of opportunities that I had back then. And then I select display units and I selected custom. And with custom, I'm saying, hey, use this format for me. Add my value, put a comma in every thousand, and as well add the name opportunities at the beginning. So these opportunities is basically a format code. It's not a
Yep.
concatenate dash measure anything. It's just my command here in the format code. And you can do the same. You can come here and bring any kind of code, and then this is gonna be more robust. That's the title. Now you can change the color, the transparency, the font differently than the rest, as you can see. And you can use the show blank as. If there is nothing, then it will show maybe something else.
I mean, continuously, the show Blanca is one of my favorites. I am so tired of putting a plus zero on a measure, and then you have to
Uh,
go to the measure, and then you have to filter there and does not equal zero to not show the because otherwise it might show on every single
every
row
single
or
one.
something. Like
Yeah,
it is so painful to have a matrix table or something like that. So that should have been there from like Power BI's releases. Do I want just type in any character you want to, and then it automatically just puts that in the visual for you.
yeah, yeah. And that show blank as is as well for value. Value
So
is. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I
No,
was
no,
just gonna
please go
say
ahead.
the one thing that I can see as a little bit of a pain point for people is the with models with calculation groups, it discourages implicit measures. And from the wells that you have over on the X and Y axis, that makes sense to discourage them there because you want to use the sales amount measure. You don't want to put the sales amount column from the fact table in there. But I can still see a lot of value for these data labels. If I just want to have a customer name in there, like that means I have to create a measure for customer name. If I want geography location, I have to create a measure for, to do a min or max. I would hope someday there's still maybe a way to have measure like some type measures like that are aggregations to be discouraged. But if you're doing a categorical labeling in any of these sections, it would still allow you to drag a text field or something like that into here and still get the first, yeah, something like that. Just because otherwise you end up having a shotgun with all these additional data label options. I can see a lot of models now requiring a lot more measures for every single text
Yeah,
column to then have to be used into this. So I can envision a hybrid world where explicit measures are discouraged, but that doesn't apply to columns that are maybe text or something like that. Somehow you're still able to use a column in these add values wells, but not in the primary ones for like actual visual summations or something.
that's correct. Yeah, that's right. In the value is one of them. We usually will take the revenue, which is
Hmm.
what goes by default from whatever calculation you have. But in here you can change it for something else. Maybe you are not okay showing that value. You want something else, and
Hmm.
that's what I'm doing. I'm exchanging that with another value, which is what we did back in what March
Yep.
when we implemented measure-driven data labels. So now measure-driven data labels has been not deprioritized. It has been enhanced, and
Yes.
now it's going to be part of the field well for the value. And here's where you can change it for whatever other measure you want to do it.
Exactly, and well, this gives you an option to use depending on your model. You can use either a column or a measure in here. If you
Yep.
pointed it at a column, it would do first. It just the default aggregation is to do a first of the category.
Yes, correct.
And yeah, and I'm just hoping someday we're a model with a calc group, which would prevent you from ever using a column.
For
You'd have to go write all those measures. I'm
no, no,
hoping
no.
the
Yeah,
product team might
that
update that.
that's right. And well, that's our vision. However, we need to work a lot with Jay
Yeah,
and figure something out there so then he can unblock that part in the core visuals. But yeah, honestly, I heard from the reference labels that people were now adding a lot of measure just to give reference labels for each card, and it was
yep.
a little bit painful. So they were asking the same thing: can we use like field parameters or something here that it can with one single measure we can fill up all these cards in one like really quick?
I could imagine you'd from a modeling metadata perspective, you'd either A, have to specially designate these wells as a special type of well that can inherit a column, or B, you then have to flag the columns as like an exception to it. But I could I could personally envision hopefully Jay finds some way to like recognize that those base wells that you have over on the right, the X, Y axis,
Yeah,
those are
this
all
one.
restricted. But any of these detail type ones that you have that are in the submenus, those are their own special type of well where that rule doesn't apply, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Fingers
Um,
crossed,
we'll get
as a
there.
pipe dream. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Just because as you said, we want to prevent too many what is Kurt Bueller has a good just article on this. They're like the report scoped measures. They're measures that are special titles. They're the measures that are used for data labels, but it's all those things that aren't really accessible or usable for a ton of stuff, but they're designed for a very particular visual on a particular page.
yeah, that's correct. All
Yeah.
right. So now let's go to the detail. Same thing. Detail, all the options, show blank as, and here we can add the color as well. I added some conditional formatting. When it's negative, it's one, and then it will turn red. That's why we can see this one in particular being red, and the rest that are positive, they are black. So you can
Okay.
make anything
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing here is you can see that all of them have this kind of feel, or like we call
Mhm.
them peel wells. So this is a peel, and that means that you can, if you want, you can make the title be the value and the value be the title because they have the same kind of a
Yeah.
structure. Or
Exactly.
the detail, this percentage, and it can be at the very top. You can just remove this one and put it in the title. Like
You essentially have
it's a
3
ton of control.
lines to display anything you want,
Yeah,
and you each of those lines is a single formatting. So line 1, 2, and 3 has its own font, color, and size, and it's up to you to determine what you want to display where. What's your first, second, and third, and how big, small, dark, or bright do you want it? But the rest of that, I'm assuming the opportunities, that's a concatenated measure. That is, you put a text quote of opportunities to space, and then you're probably formatting the value and inside of a calculation, right?
yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So it's there. Yes, there's a little bit of DAX in this first version. Hopefully someday we get more of a UI that lets you kind of just say, "I would like you to give me this text," and you just drag a measure into a well, and it automatically does the concatenation for you. But to start with,
Not only that,
yeah,
what we want to do is
yeah,
you can use a field. Like for example, if I want to see the growth from the previous year, you can just go into the detail or the title
mhm,
and then just drag it here, and then
yep.
we want to have some kind of a drop down that says, okay, what do you want to see here? Do you want us to show the difference between the previous and the current? Do you want a
Uh,
variance?
mm,
Like we will make those calculations for you based on a
gotcha.
measure that you drag like
So
that quick.
if you give 2 values, you can ask it for the 3rd value, just compare A and B
Yeah,
for you. Okay,
yeah,
cool. So it auto generated KPI, like, just show me the variance of these, show me variance value and percentage, show me just
yep,
percentage, show me the number variance, whatever it might be. Okay.
that's
So
correct.
it's 2 measures instead of 3 measures you have to write.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct,
Cool.
and that's what we want to do. However, we want to start with like a way to allow the users to have any flexibility, and from there expanding and adding more stuff. Again, not overwhelming users, and always trying to give you something every month. That's why maybe
Exactly.
you're gonna say, "Hey, but this is a lot of work." Well, we understand that. We will get you more options to make it easier. But right now, you finally have the opportunity that you never had before. When I was working on the COVID-19 report, I needed some kind of like label stuff like this, and saying, hey, in this date, this happened, like some kind of text saying that maybe is when the vaccination started, and that's why we were dropping or increasing cases, and I didn't have any way to display that text or any. I think it was another thing that we needed to highlight in the labels to let people know that after or yeah, after that particular date, something was important
Hmm.
that people need. It was important for them to recognize that information, so then they can understand why the trend was going up or down. And it was impossible. Like even if I wanted to overlap some visualizations, overlapping those visuals or putting some text on top, it won't work because we were refreshing that data every single day, and that text will stay. Like we basically had to move that thing every like 6 hours. So now you have all those options. You can really take things to the next level. You can use the title to show if you have a promotion that day, or if maybe some stores closed, or if it was like Black Friday, and that's why, like whatever you want to use these fields, now you have that availability, like ability.
I like that. No, I mean anything that I mean honestly saves time. I enjoy um being able to get rid of some videos that are hacks. Like I have a rotating grab bag of like mm, tips and tricks that are workarounds that I constantly evolve. And every time I get to take something off that list of my grab bag of fun stuff because there's a feature that now makes this easy enough that I don't have to explain it. It's a good day for me because it's not everybody's going to stumble across a video that I've written. And anytime you can have a built-in feature like a lot of this stuff that the first-time user of Power BI can figure out with a little bit of time, that goes a long way to making sure that the base level of reports that are being built are continuously getting better and better because the complexity is being reduced.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, complexity is like you can see that it's complex. All this is complex, especially because you still need to use some DAX. In my example here, I in my DAX I said that only show me the values for July, because this is the last month I have here in 2023. Maybe it's important for me to compare the Julys from the previous 2 years. That's why I want my label. And
Okay,
the-
yeah, yeah.
and this DAX is removing by itself other labels, and you can see that no problems by having
Mhm.
blanks. So basically, Power BI detects when there are blanks and just do not display anything at all.
Okay.
But you can take your DAX to any level you want. I am not an expert in DAX, but still quite complex for me to create those measures. And again, at least you have something here to play with,
I
and
mean,
you
this
can
is
take it.
Gen 1, right? Like Gen 1 is
Yeah.
just you write the measure, we'll display it. Gen 2 is we'll write the comparative measures for you, right?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. That's the next level for us to give you some kind of
Mhm.
quick calculations where based on the options that you're dragging, then we can calculate for you.
Yeah.
More or less what we did for the KPI card, right? In the KPI card we have goal, and then you were using that field there, and then we had distance. And we used to give you the distance by the system. So that's something similar. The only problem that I had with the KPI is that not all the time I want to see. I want to see that distance. I want to see something else sometimes, and it was too restrictive. So we don't want that. We want to give you full control, but as well we want to give you some quite of easy paths for you to just get the information you need in one click without using DAX.
Exactly. I mean, everything's moving to low code, no code, which is where it should be. You want to reduce complexity and leave the coding for the actual coders that need to do it, not the report designers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Time is gold.
Beautiful.
All right, so here is another one. The in the bar chart, having a layout that is vertical or multi-line, like in the column chart, it might not be ideal because there is not much space and it doesn't really look nice. What you can do with these new data labels, let me just, oh, that was the right one, is if you go all the way down to the layout, you can see another layout option. And then you have multi-line and single line. Multi-line is this problem that I was explaining. There is not much space here. But with the single line, you can now see the title and the value and the details side by side.
Mhm.
Multi-line will show you on top of each other. So the title, the value, and the detail is like completely stacked. That's the difference, and it depends the data
Okay.
visualization. It depends the thickness of the bars. Maybe if my bars are
Mhm.
quite thick, then it might make more sense for me to have them multi-line. But that's not the case in this visual, so then I use the single line.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the having the ability to choose single line versus multi, I think, yeah, like, helps you to design the visual shapes to a degree, and
Yep.
it more closely aligns with the type of visual that you're using. So that's awesome.
So that's basically it. That's what is coming in December. And again, use the hashtag PBIX PBI core visuals, and
Yes.
that's gonna help us to and that's gonna help us to collect information, fix some bugs that you find, any ideas that you might have. Like the community is part of the whole process, and we value your voice.
I'd say for people watching this, the easiest way to get that feedback back to them is the hashtag PBI Core Visuals on social media like Twitter and LinkedIn. You're also welcome to drop a comment in onto the YouTube chat below, and I'll make sure to get those to Miguel. But they already have scrapers that kind of go look at the stuff that's on LinkedIn. So if you see something in this video that you liked, would want to see differently, something that was missed, I'd say the best place is to go to LinkedIn, and you feel free to reference this video here at either one of us, but make a comment on any of the social media platforms, and then those will get collected as they start looking at feedback on making sure that this can deliver the best version of itself as this product evolves.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I appreciate you so much for coming on to do this. I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities to continue to have chats like this as this product grows. But it's it's continuously exciting stuff as we keep getting Christmas presents
Yeah,
on all these new things with visualization. So thank you for sharing all this today.
my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, yeah. And until next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, or share this video. Plus, if you have any comments for a future video, go ahead and add that to the comment section down below. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, or you want to see more of these awesome videos, please click that subscribe and notification button. Also, feel free to show your support by becoming a channel member.